Restore Thrive, we're back. Thanks for joining us again, guys. We're going to talk about today is shoulder function, and specifically shoulder impingement, or when I get that kind of hot feeling in the front or the top of my shoulder, what can I do about that in the gym that might solve that problem? So we see this a lot with folks who are doing any sort of pressing, whether it's horizontal pressing or vertical pressing overhead. And we see a big root of that being that we lose shoulder position. Our shoulder comes forward as I start to press. And when I do that, in that rounded shoulder position, what I'm doing is I'm putting all the stress through the front of the shoulder where that rotator cuff comes across, and that just wears those structures out quickly. So we should be able to get our shoulder back in good position, start in a low position here, and press ourselves out. The classic example is the push-up. If I start on the floor, I should be able to organize my shoulders, and as I press, my shoulders shouldn't come forward. The same thing if I'm bench pressing, I should be able to get my shoulders and my shoulder blades back. As I come down, those shoulders stay back, and when I press back up, my shoulders don't come forward. And the last example, that vertical press, when I press up here, the big tell here is if I get my arm overhead and my elbow starts to flare out, that's that shoulder rounding forward again. So we want to make sure in either of those positions, horizontally or vertically, we're creating what we call torque or stability in the shoulder. What that looks like when we're overhead is that armpit faces forward and that thumb is back. When we're horizontal, again, that's the shoulder sitting in the back of the socket as we press and not coming forward. So all of this is to give you some reference for what we're going to do today, which is just a basic reset exercise that we can do if we've got a squat rack, and we'll show you how to do this even if you don't have a squat rack around a pole or an upright bar. So what we've got set up here is a band just hooked around these J hooks in the squat rack. And what I'm going to do, if you want to come a little bit closer, is I'm going to bring my arm inside the band. I'm going to press that band out. Now that is just to get my shoulder active. But again, remember, we don't want to be in this forward shoulder position. So I'm going to put my hand, my free hand, back around my elbow to keep my elbow straight. I'm going to let that shoulder sit in the back of the socket, which is going to feel, you're going to feel that resistance kind of pushing into the palm of your hand, or that crook between your thumb and your index finger. Now from here, if you want to come around the front, what we're going to do is we're going to try to rotate that elbow and upper arm in and out of that stable position. So here's stable position, palm up, pit of the elbow up, shoulder in the back of the socket. Here, I'm unwinding a little bit of that stability, and then I'm re-educating my shoulder how to find stability under load in a good shape or in a good position of my shoulder. So I can do that back and forth, trying to turn my upper arm and my elbow, keep that shoulder in the back of the socket for just 10 reps. And when that gets easy, what I can do is I can start to add a little bit of that overhead position. I don't have to go from horizontal to all the way vertical, but I can go a little bit out in front, get that shoulder back a little bit in the socket, and start to rotate again. Get that elbow and upper arm moving. Make sure that we're not just flipping the wrist back and forth, but you're actually getting that shoulder rotating back to set in the socket. Eventually, we want to be able to get all the way overhead, keep that rib cage now, elbow extended, and be able to rotate that shoulder up into a stable position. Then I can unwind a little bit and then rotate back into a stable position. This is going to seem pretty familiar for you guys who are doing any sort of overhead pressing. That feeling of pinching at the top of the press happens when we don't create that torque to get that armpit forward and that thumb back. Now the other way we can do this, if we take the band off the hook here, is we can come just around any sort of upright pole and basically create that same force and that same shape. Just pushing out, putting the hand around the back of the elbow, and working that rotation of the arm back and forth with that shoulder in the back of the socket there. So give that a try at the gym. Again, 10 reps or so is usually enough to get your shoulder warmed up. You can even fit this in between your sets if you're doing any sort of pressing. Let us know what you guys think. We'll talk to you again soon.